Well, I've read your new book. Congratulations, it was well done. Could you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Bob. My name is Grant Karcich. I'm an Oshawa native. Lived in town most of my life since I was 5 or so.
And what prompted, have you always been interested in history?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, going back even, I guess, early as, say, grade 10, interested in the early history here of Oshawa in particular.
Yeah.
So it's...
Did you study that in school as well, or continue on in school in history, or?
No, not in history per se. I went on to get an education in library science and in anthropology.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my anthropology interest was in early prehistoric society here in southern Ontario, and that led me to explore that aspect of it. But the historical part, just early on as I was growing up, I really liked history and geography.
And the name of your book?
Oh, the book, get a shameless plug.
Yeah.
Scugog Carrying Place, a frontier pathway. It's based on the name given to the trail that ran through here from Lake Ontario, Lake Scugog and beyond.
Why do they call it Scugog rather than Oshawa?
It was chosen by Leslie Frost, who wrote a book back in 1973 called Forgotten Pathways of the Trent.
Mm-hmm.
And he started referring to it as a Scugog Carrying Place. Before that, I probably might have had various different names, like the Nonquan Trail, etc. And even the word Oshawa itself, some people thought was the name of that area or for the trail. So we're not exactly sure of the old derivation, but this dates back to Leslie Frost from 1973.
Yeah, so the trail itself, when did people start passing through this area?
When you look at the early European settlers that first came in from the newly formed United States, and then later from the UK, they started about 1793-94, settling here in our part of the country. So,
and they would have come across this trail that was already here?
Definitely. In fact, the very first known settler here, Benjamin Wilson, settled down on Lot 4, Broken Front concession of what was then called Whitby Township. And the first...
Broken Front, just for people's knowledge, they draw a straight long line just north of the water's edge. Then they build the concessions north of that, right?
Yes. Broken Front simply implied that you didn't have a rectangular plot of land, because part of it was based on the lakeshore. That was the Broken Front.
So the first settlers would have started sort of on the lake and then gradually moved up.
Precisely. That's how settlement happened here, and working its way all the way up to not only Lake Simcoe but beyond Lake Scugog first, and then to Simcoe.
Yeah, and I guess the terminus of the trails down at the lake would there have been Indian camps there to begin with, or?
Maybe not precisely on the trail itself, but off the side of the trails. We mentioned Benjamin Wilson, and the first map we have of the area, his house is built right at the southern tip. It's indicated on that early map as being right at the end of the trail. So yes, he knew the trail was here when he got here. The natives tended to spend part of their spring and fall fishing at the mouths of various creeks and streams, like the Oshawa Creek, the Farewell Harmony Creeks.
Would they have dried the fish or kept it over the winter?
Yes.
Yeah.
They would have, yes.
Yeah. And Wilson, from your book, he wasn't the first to be at the foot of the first Western person. I understand there was somebody even prior to that.
Yeah, it was a gentleman called Jean-Baptiste Rousseau, and he was a fella, I think, born in Montreal, but lived early on in Cataraqui, modern-day Kingston, and he seasonally would trade with the natives, he would sort of go down where they had these fishing camps in the spring and fall, and end up trading with them when they were congregating in larger groups.
And what would be selling them? What would he be trading for?
Oh, mostly modern European goods that the Mississaugas, the native group here, would want. Things like iron kettles, guns for hunting, blankets, flints for the guns, other accessories, knives and axes, things that replaced their traditional implements that were much harder to manufacture in the old way.
And what sort of furs would they be giving? Beaver or bigger animals? Or
probably a variety of different animals, not only beaver, but even muskrats. That was one of the things they would hunt when they came down and create these fishing camps. They would be around sometimes for months at a time, and that gave them an opportunity to hunt for small mammals as well as fish.
That sounds like quite a story. What gave you the idea of wrapping this all up into a book?
Well, the impetus really started about 4 years ago when I had moved back to town after being away up north for a few years, and the first thing I saw was down east of the harbor, this big berm being built from dredging material from the harbor. And I thought, gee, this is kind of destroying what's left of the site down there where Benjamin Wilson had started out.
Yeah, the archaeology of it.
That archaeology always interested me, and I wondered exactly, well, where is the Wilson house? Because like 20 years prior to that, I had examined the scatter on the plowed land down there and found a number of artifacts which I sent into the province, and they gave it a site location number to designate the Wilson site. But the actual pinpointing of that house and barn and farmstead was never done. Yeah, that was one thing that really surprised me when I looked through the book. And the final chapter there I found quite interesting on that, but nobody's ever followed up. Like, incredible history there. And this is, I've been long associated with history and that, and nobody knows where it is. It's such a basic, fundamental. And we've got the two heritage sites there, the fur trader's cabin and the Wilson's place. Yeah. And nobody, well, it was down there somewhere. And that's precisely the reason one of the main reasons for writing the book is to make that history available, to a modern generation, because I grew up reading about it, but I think the current generation probably has forgotten about it, so it's kind of reminding them. Yeah. Well, you did a fantastic job. I know I read it. I was up to 2 o'clock in the morning. I read it in a matter of a few days. And I just kept reading through because it was interesting, just putting the pieces together. Yeah, and I know I took my old maps and looked through them, and I was plotting it out for myself and using the maps in the books too, so cross-referencing. And it's amazing to think of the people that have passed through here over the years. Yeah, it's the trail itself. It's more like I won't say facsimile, but it's like the right word can't come to me. It's sort of a microcosm of the history that developed here from the early European days, because you get after the native settlements, you get the French and English fur traders. These are all the things we studied in grade school. And after them, you get settlers, and they farm. And then after that, you start the early developments of industry, and you end up having what we have today here in Oshawa. Yeah, I saw it sort of like a chain, and it was interesting to see one group after another
following the same path. And it was interesting that it sort of does follow, correct me if I'm wrong here, the outline of Simcoe Street and Farewell and Ritson and all that. And they still exist today, that basic pathways, maybe not the same road bed, but along the same ways.
The carrying place itself, the pathway, followed closely to and sometimes intersects with parts of what's today Simcoe Street. And it's not only an actual physical road, but there's that kind of metaphoric description, as we just talked about, where you get that progression from fur trading,
the ages of man through Oshawa.
Industry. And this all happens here within a span of about 55 to 60 years. So it's a very compressed aspect. When we studied in school and we read about the history of New France and whatnot, and so on, those things happen here, but in a much compressed time frame.
Yeah, and that's what bothers me with not knowing precisely. Like, I see the Wilson as one of the anchor points, and the anchor sort of dragged, and we really don't know precisely. And you would think it would be so easy to do some basic archaeologically. We know it's within a certain area.
Exactly.
And, down there, and it's just a case of doing the homework and doing the shovel work.
Well, there's more work that's been going on behind the scenes that I haven't put in the book about trying to find the Wilson site. For the last 3 years, I've been trying to pinpoint more accurately where it could be, getting the city involved, at least on their side of the property.
Is the farm tech operations going to impact this?
Oh, of course. If Farm Tech goes ahead with this proposed ethanol plant down on Lot 4, where Wilson had his home, it'll certainly impact, and we won't know exactly how until we can find the site. And so just earlier this week, I made a presentation to the city's Development Services Committee about notifying the landowner down there for Lot 4, which is now the Oshawa Port Authority, to help us or allow us to try to pinpoint more accurately where it could be. You have to know that Farm Tech, who actually funded an archaeological survey, went back to the old site that I had discovered years ago and tried to see if they could find the place where Wilson's house was. 2 years ago they did that, and to my knowledge they never discovered that. And
was that a complete study, an archaeological study?
They went down to what's called stage 3 level assessment, where they dug up meter square outlines, and they had about more than a dozen of those test pits. They did that.
Any word on what they found? Or?
Well, from my knowledge, from what I know, basically not a whole lot. Not much more than I had found years earlier.
Yeah, and that's what I would like to see them do some more work. I think this book's a great start and a great, I don't know, bringing it to our consciousness.
Well, there's one little aspect that I could throw in right now is, and this last fall, I had a group come in from the University of Toronto who were looking at the ground just on the edge of Lot 4, because we couldn't go onto the harbor property, but only on the city, and we examined it to see if we could find Rousseau's cabin on Lot 3. And now with my so-called request to the Harbor Authority, I'm asking that we now look at the land between what they studied 2 years ago and what we did last fall, the land in between, to see if we can pinpoint using ground penetrating radar equipment without disturbing the land, pinpointing where the foundations of the Wilson house and barn would be.
Oh, very interesting. Well, I would like to thank you very much for doing the book. I recommend it to everybody. I picked mine up at Chapters, and I'm sure they're available in many other locations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to talk about it, of course.